colonial history has been so cruel to us, so mercilessly cruel, that it distorts our very humanity. It distorts our humanism. Colonial history is a real poison of the world. It is the way the West tried to exterminate anything that had come from the mother continent and distort it as much as possible in their favor. It reminds me of the whole question of naming ourselves. Naming ourselves is so important that Muhammad Ali said, the fact that we suffer from high blood pressure, sugar diabetes, and things like that is because of our misnaming. It is because we were misnamed, meaning that he only really found himself as soon as he named himself. As soon as he gave himself a name, then he felt like he was somebody, that he matters. I'm also reminded of the story of the woman called Nanny in Jamaica, who fought the slave master. He was a war commander. After he won a great part of the war, he went with his troops to settle on the mountain, and they named that mountain Nanny City. Now, Nanny's surname or something of that kind is not known. It's not in history. She was just known as Nanny. It is not in any book. As much as even we as African people, this whole thing of surname came only afterwards. All these were just clan names, and a number of them. And then somebody chose one to call it surname. So Nanny didn't have a surname. And then her new established refuge in town was called Nanny. It brings me to the ruthlessness of the colonizers, that they even used the African Americans, in the example of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, to come and name things after themselves and obliterates everything that is about us. For instance, you have this Wilberforce College, which was named Wilberforce College. And I think for one other reason, to be able to raise funds in America then, and one had to call it Wilberforce, after the Wilberforce University in Ohio, and after that white man called William Wilberforce initially. And first and foremost, now, I'm trying to say that this Wilberforce ought not to have been named Wilberforce, because it was a great African victory. Tansy and Zachariah Tansy, Jansi Tansy, got a piece of land just after another fellow clergyman, Edward Tsewu, had won the right for African people to own land in the old Transvaal, in a case that stretched from 1903 to 1905. And then they found this piece of land, and first thing they thought, let's build a college here. So this college ought to be named Tansy Tsewu College, ultimately. Tansy Tsewu College, not Wilberforce, because the time of raising funds in the US and all that, it's high time that we must stand on our own, name ourselves, so that our children can be truly liberated. I dare say later on in life, or even when I was a pastor, there was a bishop who was clearly a CIA agent, Bishop Mee. And when you go across this country, you find a lot of churches named after him because people did not know that this guy was working for the American government as much as the very Henry McLean Turner, who brought the AME Church here, was also the vice chairman of the Colonial Society of America. But I'm going back to naming. For instance, there is a thug bishop called Bishop Sims. And our children don't know that story. I'm here to tell that story. That's why I'm still alive, to tell such stories. Bishop Sims had come over here to this country, having traveled by sea, and in a ship. Then there were very few aeroplanes, if any, to travel across the Atlantic. And around 1932, he came to stay here for 4 years as a bishop of this church. Guess doing what? Staying with a concubine. 4 years, sleeping and showing off the concubine as his wife. Showing the concubine as his wife. And ultimately fathered a kid with the concubine. And our mothers, our foremothers, were so excited about the child born in Africa from the African American parents that they call Negroes there. And they rushed to give the child a name. It was only until Bishop Wright, Richard Robert Wright, came in 1936 that he alerted the people that this woman who was here with your so-called bishop was not his wife. And guess what? A big tabernacle is built in Alexander Township called Sims Tabernacle. It stands today. I'm not trying to insult that place, because as much as I'm going to shortly tell the story about Wilberforce itself, I'm not insulting history, I'm denuding all that was horrible about history, has poisoned our minds today. That's why you get children becoming mentally sick and all that. You get surprised why they have been misnamed. Now, Bishop Wright, then when he came here, to his horror, his predecessor had had the concubine with himself here when he left his wife in America. And Bishop Wright went straight away to charge Bishop Sims. And Bishop Sims was suspended. But history also does not tell everything about when they were suspended and how long and so on, because they were the masters. So, you know, even in the beginnings of Wilberforce, when Americans came here and they would organize what they called Tawawa. Tawawa was about women bringing clothing, utensils, and linen for the students at Wilberforce, and cutlery and all that, which was a great thing. But when they had to applaud all these great things, they were told by the Americans, give it 5 tawawas, give it 6 tawawas, give it 7 tawawas. Our people gave tawawa without questioning what is tawawa. Only to find out, man, tawawa is the first name of a motel or what do they call these places? All right, for lack of remembering some of these things, motel. And it was a resort, of course, a resort where rich Americans, white Americans, used to bring their concubines to this resort called Tawawa. And later on they sold it to the Negroes, and the Negroes named it Wilberforce. Now they come to South Africa and tell us to celebrate Tawawa, for that matter, to celebrate that debauchery of the white masters, slaveholders. So this is the point I'm trying to talk about, naming our edifices, naming our children, naming even our animals. Everything that we can name, give a name to, we have a responsibility to give a good name, the best name that could preserve even its health, mental health, and even physical health. A lot of psychosomatic illnesses also are as a result of what people are named. So, coming to this piece that we have just done now on Tsewu and others, let me pause there and watch for ourselves as to who were the Tsewus, who were the Tansis, who were the others, who were the Reverend Mazibugo, and who were the Reverends Tansis and others, Marcus Khabashani, who were the founders of Wilberforce, which should be renamed. And I don't just propose. I'm saying if we don't do it now, posterity is going to do it. It ultimately had to be renamed Tansi Tsewu College. Thank you.
You can ad-lib. Start along, Baba. You're free to speak.
Oh, you talk of Edward Tsewu. Father yes. Edward Tsewu, I'm sorry, Tsewu. Edward Tsewu was a warrior minister when they were still called ministers, and he was a clergyman. He grew up in the Cape Colony, and
in the old map.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the Cape Colony.
Yes.
Look, I'm from the old school. I don't talk. I still call where we are Transvaal to some extent,
I see, of course.
And if you want to quarrel with me, it's up to you. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I get it.
So, Gauteng has always been there, but Transvaal was there before Gauteng.
Of course.
As a matter of fact, they coexisted. People would come to this region called Gauteng. Today, so it was not a new word that came in 1994.
Okay.
It was not a new name at all. It had always been there.
Been there, yes.
Yes. So Edward Tsewu came to the old Transvaal after he done his schooling in Lovedale and others, and taught by people like Chamjache, top educators of the time. And when he came here, he was frustrated to find that people don't have land, they don't own land here.
Yeah.
So that's why I call him the foremost warrior preacher. Our preachers were warriors. We're not just
soft.
Called men of the cloth.
Almost soft.
Yes, straight-jacket men of the cloth and so on, who's appealing to white taste. No,
I see.
This was a guy who was expelled from his church in the Presbyterian church.
Because he was militant.
He was militant. and they were militant then. They were militant just like Paul Bogle in the U.S., who fought the British there, who fought who fought the slave masters there.
Oh, I see.
Edward Tsewu fought the British here in South Africa, and those who came before them, like Sam Sharp, like Kaju, like Teki, like a woman called Nanny, who established the first town on a mountain in the Caribbean. I see. And in Jamaica, as a matter of fact. And Nat Turner, they fought, they spilled blood, and some of them were hung, for that by the masters when they caught them.
Yes.
You understand? And these were ministers of religion.
Wow.
Okay?
I see.
So religion has not always been this soft thing that you...
Tell the other cheek.
You understand? Tell the other cheek. No ways. They accepted turn the other cheek when in context.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
But they never preached too much about turn the other cheek. They preached more about Ethiopia shall stretch her hands unto God and so on, which means the land will go back to the people, between the people and their God. You understand what I mean? These are the people who spawned people like Marcus Garvey.
I see.
And these were warriors like Tansi, who bought Wilberforce in 1905.
In Evaton, yeah.
In Evaton in 1905. I mean, not 8. Let me see now. In 1905, yes, he bought land in Evaton 1905 and established Wilberforce Institute in 1918 on his own land with his sons.
Wow.
You understand what I mean?
Wow.
These were unlike the Americans who actually came to support them on their programs, because the programs are already running.
Yeah.
They didn't wait for Americans to fund them. They funded themselves. The school was established.
Yeah.
These were warrior fighters. They were warrior fighting for the land. These are the first people who didn't just grab the land. Edward Tsewu went to the Supreme Court in 1903, between 1903 and 1905, to fight for the rights of the African people to own land in the Transvaal.
I see.
By the way, he had grown up in the colony, British colony, where people own land.
I see.
The so-called Bantus there were allowed to own land.
Yes.
But he said, no ways, you are going to own land also here.
Yeah.
So when he left his church, he didn't leave his church to go and wander around and look for a job. They joined the Ethiopian movement.
I see.
Yes. That was started by Nehemiah Tile, incidentally also in the Eastern Cape.
I see.
Who were also, Nehemiah Tile was expelled from the Methodist Church for taking up, the tradition of his fathers, and went and donated a bull when the king's son was coming out of initiation school. You understand? Now, they still called, the colonials called those paramount chiefs, but that was a king. You understand what I mean?
see.
Just like King Bambatha. King Bambatha was influenced by Evaton, the Evaton buying of land. And King Bambatha started the Bambatha Rebellion in 1906.
I see.
Huh?
I see.
So you just have a guy called here in the Vaal and in our school around the corner here, Chief Bambatha. That's sacrilegious, man.
I see.
You can't call that was Inkosi Bambatha.
I see. Not
chief. A chief is a colonial term demeaning you,
of course,
making you a busboy. You understand what I mean? One who's a kitchen nigger.
Yeah, you're just a house nigger.
House nigger.
That's what they call.
Yeah, house nigger. Yes. The chief is a house nigger. That's why Hendrik Witbooi in Namibia, who fought the Germans, who fought Leopold and others very viciously. He was also a king of the Namas.
I see.
But they call him a captain. They said he's a captain. He was a captain. And this was a war leader whose grandson became
the deputy prime minister
of Namibia.
From 95 to
also
2005.
named Hendrik Witbooi.
Yeah.
And Hendrik Witbooi was a pastor, was a king of the Nama, the younger one, and who was also a liberation theology protagonist.
I see.
And he brought more students than anybody else in this country to Wilberforce.
I see.
Maybe next to King Sobhuza, who also brought students to Wilberforce. He brought more than a dozen students to study theology here, but not only study theology, study everything, all the nuances that make that kind of theology of African people, so that they can transport it to Namibia, even before it ended the so-called independence, and so that they can empower their people. Namibia was overrun theologically by the Lutheran Church
because of the German colonials.
That's right. So he wanted to inject the African church presence in Namibia,
I see.
and made sure that he brought close to 20 students here trained. You understand what I mean?
See.
No other province of the then colonial geography, like the Cape and the Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and so on.
The current demarcations that we have. Yes.
Even the Bechuana land.
I remember.
You understand what I mean? They brought their students to Wilberforce. That's why I say Wilberforce is the mother of all education, culture, and development, not only in South Africa and Southern Africa, but in all of the continent and the diaspora.
I see.
That's why people in the diaspora, like Maya Angelou, married the boy out of Evaton, who was taught at Wilberforce, Vusemake, and so on. The chemistry was stronger because this was a son of a pastor warrior.
I see.
You understand what I mean? Yes.
So things have dynamically changed that far. I mean, we have fallen that far today if you look at the current state of affairs.
Yes.
I mean, from the legacy that these people sacrificed for.
Yes.
We have fallen very short.
Yes, we were made to fall short. We were denied the true education by the colonial powers, then by the Boers, then by the ANC government.
I see.
The ANC government still denies our people education.
Of course.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah,
that's why we
propaganda.
That's right.
Education.
That's why we will make available this kind of stories so that people should know. For instance, Wilberforce itself was named because people who taught there earlier, like Marshall Maqheke and his wife Charlotte Maqheke, have been educated in the U.S. at Wilberforce, and so on. And
in Ohio.
And in their mind, and God forbid, in their mind they thought Americans were superior because they had gotten this education, and they were speaking this English with a twang. And of course, of course, I must not denigrate them too much. They had also the first university for black people there, the Wilberforce University in Ohio.
I see.
But what really irks me, and what gets me, is when these Americans came to Evaton, and when they came to Evaton, to take over everything, and even to shut down the Ethiopian movement. All right, we'll tell that history in
a broader context.
Yes, and go very clearer context next time. But they shut down the greatest movement ever on African soil.
The greatest liberation
movement. The Ethiopian movement, and the people just talk of it as the one that preceded the ANC. It didn't just precede the ANC; it gave birth to all
other liberation movements.
Yes, you understand what I mean?
In different countries, in different regions.
That's right, and the whole of Africa.
Yeah.
That's why ANC was also in some parts of Africa, even in Zimbabwe, there was an ANC, and our young people don't know that, because Joshua Nkomo had taken ANC over there before the Zebras were born.
I see.
And and the stuff. Now, what I'm trying to say is that the guys in America who started the AME Church, actually, who started the AME Church, who rebelled out of the St. George's American Methodist Church, Episcopal Church, Richard Allen, had bought his freedom from slavery with money. He bought it from his master. He and his brother bought their freedom from slavery. They paid with money, but
to become free.
To become free.
Wow.
And then you get here to be supervised by such people with such a history, people who bought, and then you are shut off the knowledge of history of people like Nanny of Jamaica. You are shut off Paul Bogle. We are shut off Nat Turner. You can't know about them. You can't know about those people who shed their blood. They shed their blood for freedom.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And those who bought freedom, when you buy freedom, you just become a little nicer than your master.
Yeah.
You understand?
That's all, yeah.
That you say, oh, I paid for it, and then you come closer. Your niceness is closer to that of the master.
Masters.
And then you begin to buy a big hat that looks like your master, and your master says, nigga, where did you get that hat? I got an old one for you. That one suits me better. And he takes it off for you. And you say, oh, thank you, master, because you bought freedom from him.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
So you only won a very weak victory, so to speak.
Yes.
It's a very weak, anemic victory, because you just played the game and...
You just played the game. You understand what I mean?
See.
And if this suits African-American psyche, so be it. You understand what I mean? But I'm saying Africa is the origin, especially Evaton, where we are, of liberation theology of black people all over. Of course, they were preceded by the names that I've just mentioned.
Yes, of course.
People like that, they preceded them. And those are the people who spawned people like Marcus Garvey, and our McCamel, Father McCamel, took down the theology of Marcus Garvey, brought it to Evaton.
I see.
Built that temple that is bigger than most mosques that we've seen, and churches, and cathedrals here, and brought the liberation theology, running it underground, just like Sojourner Truth did.
Yes.
Sojourner Truth is a woman who was called Moses, because he freed the slaves from the south to the north in an underground train. You know, an underground train was not necessarily a choo-choo-choo train.
Of course.
It was a system of freeing slaves. And that was masterly because it was done by a woman. You know, a man with muscles and so on would have been noticed, and you understand what I mean? And he would have been cut underbelly and so on. But the woman who was Sojourner Truth, followed by Harriet Tubman, which Charlotte McCracken tried to follow, but unfortunately she was from a colonized country that had never known raw slavery.
Yeah, of course.
You understand what I mean? And they thought things should come eslaver for them.
Yes.
They didn't fight like those people.
Yeah, they didn't fight. Of
course, we were not in chains like the Cape slaves in the Cape who were in chains. And also, you understand what I mean? So yes, and this is our story that brought about people like Edward Tsewu, warrior preacher, warrior liberator.
I see.
This is where we are. And then when we start our college very soon, you and I, on these issues, we might call it something like African Warrior College or something like that.
That was a nice name. I love it.
You understand
AWC.
what I mean?
That sounds cool.
African Warrior College.
That sounds cool.
You understand?
That sounds very interesting.
Or Warrior of History College.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
You understand what I mean?
College sounds
cool.
Yeah.
We come from people who shed their blood, man.
Yeah.
And
and we should remember that.
Yes.
Yeah, we should remember that.
Unlike our people who went from here to exile and had their blood wasted by the coons who were running the ANC.
Of course.
You understand?
Yeah.
Who treated them like dead just because majority of them had come out of black consciousness movement. So when they were converting them, they were taking them through.
So they hazed them.
Yes, like you know, when you went to college during times earlier than mine, and also when I went to high school, they used to call it a treatment, initiation or something.
Oh yes. That's called hazing today.
Hazing.
We call it hazing.
Yes.
Yeah, when they mistreat you. They mistreat you. Yeah, they force you to do all kinds of.
And then people like Joe Mudisa send young people into that town in Nelspruit to come and buy them Flosham shoes and so on. That's why it's not surprising that this crook who died the other day here, who was a friend of the man who said finish and clear. I'm his friend, finish and clear. And so he also gave Thabo Mbeki some Flosham shoes. So these are Flosham shoes masters.
I see.
So they are nothing but first Flosham shoes masters. Even if Thabo Mbeki talks of second economy, Why didn't he implement it? Because he's a flesh and shoe.
I see.
You understand what I mean? Why didn't he implement it? He talked about agriculture widely, that people must have gardens and so on. He had misread his history. Township people had never had good gardens. They had lawns, roses.
Yeah.
And so he grew up elaleni, where there were perhaps gardens. And then he thought, he didn't know, he could not make out the mentality of the township people from Edward's mentality. And then he rested on his laurels. He criticized HIV/AIDS as a cause of what? Of
poverty, as a disease of poverty. He said it's a disease of poverty.
You understand what I mean? And then, but why couldn't he bring about cadres of agriculture, who could compete with the Boers in agriculture, in their small backyards, who could compete with anybody, just like people now in Cuba are doing, in their gardens and so on. And in their gardens, on the soil, on the roof, and everywhere else. And then, just like Churchill said, we'll fight them in the air, in the sea. You must have your garden in the sea, in the water,
everywhere you can.
Land.
Everywhere you can.
You must understand what I mean?
I see.
You must have your gardens at the airport, so that when you get off there, you get some carrots pull out of the garden at the airport. You understand? Africanize things. Stop building cities in the air. Like Ramaphosa's dream, cities in the air, next to that airport near Pretoria.
Oh yes, I see. The Lanseria one.
And the Lanseria airport and all that nonsense. But these are he was inheriting flush and shoes politics mentality.
Yeah, I see.
You understand what I mean?
It's flush and politics.
You understand what I mean?
I see.
Yes.
I see what you mean.
When I first went to America in 1984, a friend of my friends, older friends, said to me, I must bring flush and shoes. First thing was, when you get to America, go bring me flush and shoes. And when I went to New York, there was a whole departmental store, flush and shoes. You understand what I mean?
I see.
You see how these things poison minds of people?
Yeah, and people become entrapped in that.
Yes. I grew up in the church. Where most of the elders that I followed were trendy dressers.
I see.
Just like the American masters.
Okay.
Oh yes, they wore flush and shoes. They wore the trendiest suits.
In French we call that what? Sapo, something like that. Where these guys spend money and they buy fancy clothes.
Yes.
Very fancy, expensive.
Let me tell you, people fight in South Africa to go to America every 4 years, to go and be puppets in conferences that they never participated in the preparations of. And the agenda is already drawn and everything else. All that African Americans need is their vote.
Yeah, that's all.
You understand what I mean?
That's all they do.
And then they go shopping. And I'm one of them. I used to go shopping. I used to dress like, man, when I went to America, actually, I was dressed up from Johannesburg, a slacks, trousers, front pocket, and so on. One young lady came to me and said, did you buy this in New York somewhere when you got off the plane? I said, look at me, baby. I'm from Joburg, man. I'm from Joburg. I bought this in Joburg. And she could not understand it. Because I have been a dresser, brother.
I see.
You ask any AME about Paul Villagas. He was one of the top dressers. Now I don't dress up anymore, not because I don't have money anymore, but because I'm at leisure.
Yeah.
I'll be 71 in June. Who am I dressing up for? You understand?
Yeah.
Because of course, during those days, we dressed up for a number of things.
Yeah, impressions.
Yes. We had the ladies who had to know who's the best dresser in town and in the region.
So
even in the church.
You had a competition of sorts.
Oh yes. And there's some young people who followed me. In trendy
So
dressing.
you were an Instagram before. You were an Instagram generation before Instagram.
But there had been Instagrams. But listen, another thing is that, oh yes, I'm happy to bring these nuances. Then our counterparts, especially where the churches is bigger out of the Transvaals and the Free States is in the Western Cape.
I see.
Bigger than Lesotho's and Swaziland.
Yes, yes.
Western Cape. And when I went to the Western Cape for the first time in 1972, I found the pastors there are not dressers.
Mm-hmm.
They were not
simple
trendy.
folk.
They were simple folk who were not obsessed with clothing, who were running quality churches, man. Big churches, quality churches in their own culture.
I see.
Which is Afrikaans, Khoisan kind of culture.
Yeah, it's a mixture.
You understand what I mean?
Yes.
They were running super churches. Here, you know what we used to do? We used to dress well. Some of my predecessors, of course, and I'm not including myself there because I'm darky. I used to do community work a lot. I also worked for South African Council of Churches. I was ecumenical. My local church was known for its community projects and so. But some of our predecessors, they would wake up in the morning, dress up. If there are no old folk to go and serve communion to, they would dress up and walk about and sneak into a shebeen and drink, and then they stagger slowly home and speaking American English in the street. You understand?
I see.
I'm telling you. You see?
Those were very funny folk, man.
If you find a touch of American English in me, I got it all from there.
Those guys.
Okay.
I see.
And then the churches were by luck progressive because they had strong founding fathers.
I see.
Strong founding fathers of Tansi's caliber, who were followed by people like Ntoba, who were followed by people like Silepe, Ndlazi, who followed them, and those were sober gentlemen, okay? Quality gentlemen, fathers of their children, husbands of one woman. You understand what I mean?
I see.
As per the precepts of the Bible and the discipline itself of the Amy Church.
Of course.
Yes. But the more young people went to America, the Mukonis, I just nearly forgot the big name.
Yes.
The young people began to go to America, being carted through the ship, also almost like cargo.
I see.
And they drank.
So they adopted the mannerisms of the folks they found there.
But I'll tell you something funny now. American pastors were not drunkards like ours were. Yes.
So
they were serious about their business.
Where does this drinking?
It came from apartheid and showing off.
So it was a mixture.
There were people
of those factors,
who were schooled by the apartheid schools. You remember? They spoke prim kind of English, Shakespearean English, Elizabethan English, and all that. And our people were feeling free for the first time to talk like the so-called Negroes.
I see.
You understand what I mean?
I see.
And look at me.
And of course, I mean, the black American culture is very pervasive. It's everywhere.
That's right.
It's everywhere.
But it started then. It started then, before it was widespread even in this country. These are our people who brought it there. They knew that, I mean, we preach in English even in our churches. Most of us, I did.
Yeah.
Because if you didn't preach like an American, especially in the Transvaal, you were not even taken more seriously by the intellectuals and so on.
I see.
You had to produce a sermon, but it must not be an empty noise sermon. Me, I've been producing sermons because I'm a reader, I'm self-educated, I educated myself. You understand what I mean?
I see.
I polished.
So everything. You had to.
Yes.
I see.
I had to go.
I see.
When I left theology, I had to go to enroll in colleges. I had to enroll at Wits University. I had to enroll at UNISA. You understand what I mean?
I see.
And this is it, man. Okay? Maybe sufficient for today.
Yeah. Yeah.
But remember where we come from?
More about this
Edward Tsewu.
Yeah. Edward Tsewu.
Edward Tsewu.
The warrior priest.
The warrior preacher. In the church, we don't use title priest. It's Anglican. He's a preacher, a minister.
Oh, okay.
We even use pastor, but pastor is an office. That's what we use the title Reverend,
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
But our earlier pioneers, we used to call them Father Tansi, Father Mukoni,
I see.
Father Khabashani. You know.
I see.
Yes.
I see. That's a very interesting piece of history.
Oh yeah, you got it now.
I get it, man.
Yeah, you
we gotta come back with more.
You
with
almost
more
got
this.
it.
We gotta come back with more on this.
You almost got it, man.
With
Wait a minute.
we
You're
gotta
going to
come
get
back
some
with more
more.
on this, man.
Yeah.
We'll come back in time.
Yeah.